In this video, I want to talk about the MLB, the postseason, and when teams just have this times of dominance. Because there are times where you are stuck in an era of one team. In a lot of ways, I feel like 2016 was both the end of and the beginning of an era. It's complicated because 2016 was a very pivotal year for a numerous number of reasons. First of all, 2016 was the last time that the Baltimore Orioles have made the playoffs. The Orioles were a relatively good team beforehand, and while they haven't made every single playoff in the preceding years, they did always do good enough to at least have a winning season. And they made a lot of postseasons, during that time. In 2016, though, they lost the American League wild card to the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, after that fateful moment, the Orioles had never seen a postseason again. They had a losing record in 2017. And in 2018, they had a historically bad season with 47 wins and 115 losses. In 2019, they only made a slight improvement and still lost 2/3 of their games, albeit they did do better than the Detroit Tigers, who, while starting off 7-3, would then finish, on that week 47-114 kind of note, which I think was about as bad as what the Orioles achieved in 2018. In 2020, the Orioles were only 25-35, and they had a really crummy season in 2021. And while in 2022, they did manage to make a slight improvement to an 83-79, which is actually the first winning season since 2016, they still failed to make the postseason. Maybe 2023 will be the year for the Orioles. Don't worry, Baltimore. You at least have the Ravens. And I'm not sure about their prior history, but they did make the postseason in 2022, albeit they lost the wild card round to the Cincinnati Bengals. Speaking of which, Cincinnati has not appeared in the postseason in quite a while. But here's another way that 2016 really marked a change. Now, the Mets were never a good team. They just were never really that good of a team. And 2015 was their first postseason since 2006, which is sad. But the Mets actually managed to power it through all the way to the World Series. Game 5, though, the Mets made a critical mistake, and while they were already down 3-1, so unlikely to win anyway, although the Cubs were down 3-1 and they won in 2016, what happened was that the Mets made a critical blow, and essentially what they did was that they had a chance to score a run and they didn't. When the Royals scored 5 runs in the top of the 12th, that was really just game over for the Mets, and the Kansas City Royals actually won the World Series after having lost it in 2014 to the San Francisco Giants. Now, the Mets would make the postseason again in 2016, but they would lose to the San Francisco Giants in a wild card round. Following that loss, the Mets did not make the postseason again until 2022, mainly due to blowing away leads. But 2022 was another fine example of the Mets blowing away a lead. It's just that it happened later on in the season, so they were able to at least make the postseason. While a 101-61 record might sound good on its surface, the problem was that the Atlanta Braves also had a 101-61 record. A critical series occurred in late September where the Mets were in Atlanta and they had to face them off. But the Mets had the edge. However, the Braves won all 3 games, and the previous record between the two teams of 9-7 in favor of the Mets became 10-9 in favor of the Braves. Because of this, the Mets lost the mathematical tiebreaker. By the way, game 163 was eliminated in the season. In order to end the lockout, they had to do that. So the Mets were automatically sent to the wild card, where they lost to the San Diego Padres. So obviously, you know, another heartbreaking moment for Mets fans, which I am not one personally. The New York Mets just choked away another season, and they made history because never before had a team not made it to the division series with 100 wins ever since the division series was implemented back in 1995. This is the worst team to have not made the division series since then. The previous record was the 96-67 Cincinnati Reds in 1999, who themselves lost Game 163 to the Mets and did not make the postseason. In case you're wondering, there was no such thing as a wild card back then. That was introduced in 2012. Although there was one wild card team, there was no wild card round. So simply the top team who did not clinch the division would be the one in the wild card. That's how it was for a while, in case you're wondering. Now, 2016 was also notable in other ways in the postseason. As we know, the Chicago Cubs made their first World Series since 1945 and won their first World Series since 1908 against the Cleveland Guardians, who back then were the Cleveland Indians. The Indians themselves had not won a World Series since 1948. So whoever lost the World Series would own the longest World Series win drought. All the teams that have not qualified for the World Series since then are expansion teams. We don't have any, you know, old teams who have not ever won a World Series. All those teams are new expansion teams who have not won yet. But, you know, this was a really bad blow to the Indians, but on the other hand, the Cubs needed it more badly. I'm not sure about how the Guardians did since then. I know in 2022 they won the wild card against the Tampa Bay Rays, who themselves actually made it to the 2020 World Series. They have not won a World Series, and they lost 2020 as well to the Dodgers. And in 2022, you know, they made it to the division series. They faced off against the Yankees, and while they had a 2-1 lead, the Yankees managed to turn it around and win the series 3-2. They won the series 3-2. I feel like another way 2016 was a bit of this pivotal series, was pivotal year for them, was a lot of it is actually largely due to the Astros. But the Astros didn't even qualify for the postseason in 2016. And you're right, so this would really actually be more of a 2017 kind of thing to come about. But 2017 was when Chicago Cubs fans began to get their hopes up to become a powerhouse team. Ultimately, they failed to do so, though. In 2015, they actually won the wild card round against Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Pirates. And they also won the division series against I don't know who. But they made it to the championship series against the Mets and got swept by the Mets. 2016, they managed to make it to the championship series again, beat the Dodgers, and then make it to the World Series, where they beat the Indians. In 2017, the Cubs yet again made it to the National League Championship Series, but in an exact rematch of the 2016 one, they lost the Dodgers. Dodgers, however, would lose to the Astros in the World Series. And this was very important. While the Astros made a 2015 wild card and they beat the Yankees in it, they couldn't translate that into anything more. They lost the division series. They lost it. Not sure against who, again. I'm sketchy with this old baseball history, and I should do a lot more research on this before I make these videos. But point is that they lost. But in 2017, they made it to the World Series, They lost the 2005 World Series as a National League team, but they won the World Series. Every year since then, they made it to the ALCS. In 2018, they lost to the Boston Red Sox in the ALCS, and the Red Sox then beat the Dodgers in the World Series. In 2019, they actually made it to the World Series again, beating the Yankees in the ALCS, but then again, we know the story. They lost to the Washington Nationals. This was the first time the Nationals were even in a World Series, and they actually won it. What you gotta understand about the Nationals is that back when they were the Montreal Canadiens, they had a really good record in 1994 that got ruined by a strike. This really ruined the team, and they went down to DC in the early 2000s. I think 2005 is when they moved down to DC. Very important game. Very important move. Then they really began to do better because in several years they actually clinched the NL East title. 2016, 2017. Those are just some examples. I think 2014 and 2012, they clinched the NL East title in hopes to really get into the World Series and possibly win it. But in all those times, even though they made it to the postseason and they did really well, they lost. 2016 in particular, they lost the NLDS to the Dodgers. That's how the Dodgers made it to play against the Cubs in the championship series. But in 2019, despite only being a wild card, the Nationals did a really good job turning everything around and being able to beat the Astros. In 2020, the Astros would lose the championship series to the Tampa Bay Rays. They were down 3-0, but then forced the Game 7. And this is all despite having a losing record, but the season was shortened due to COVID-19. But yes, they did have a losing 29-31 record. This is important because I think it might have been the White Sox who they beat in the wild card. I don't know. And then they beat someone in the championship series. I'm not sure who it was. I know the Yankees lost to the Tampa team, but I'm not sure about this. Nevertheless, that being said, 2021 they made it back to the World Series, lost to the Atlanta Braves, and then 2022 they made it back to the World Series, fought the Philadelphia Phillies, and they actually won against them. So, you know, and then as far as the Cubs go, in 2017, you know, after they made it back to the championship series, 2018 they tried really hard to clinch NL Central, but they lost the game 163 against the Milwaukee Brewers, so they clinched the NL Central title instead. The Cubs were demoted to wild card, and they lost to the Colorado Rockies in the wild card. Now, in 2020, they made it back. And they won NL Central. But because all teams had to go to a wild card that year, including any division winner, they were forced to go into the wild card. And I'm not sure who they played against. The point is that they lost to whoever they were playing against. I will do more research about these teams in the future, I promise. And the final thing that I want to talk to you about in 2016, because that's all I really have time for in this video, is the San Francisco Giants. In 2010, 2012, and 2014, they made the World Series and they won it. In 2011, 2013, and 2015, they did not qualify for the postseason. In 2016, they made the playoffs as a wild card. And while they beat the Mets in the wild card round, they then lost the division series. I don't know. I think it was to the Cubs. I think. Point is that they lost to somebody though. Now in 2017, they did not make the postseason, but nor in 2018 or 2019 or even 2020. In 2021, they made it back to the postseason by clinching NL West again. But the Dodgers, who by the way have made every single postseason since 2013, in some capacity or another, beat them in the division series despite the Giants having a better record than them. It was a very dramatic series and kind of the inverse of what happened in 2022, where despite the Dodgers crushing the Padres in the regular season, in the division series, the Padres actually turned it around to beat the Dodgers in the hopes to win their first ever World Series. That was crushed, however, when they lost to the Philadelphia Phillies in the championship series.